welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, and London, England, as well as Paris, France, of course. You good old boys in Africa, we love you in China, and we love you down south, but there's nobody we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful August the 7th, 2020. Ground of the Puertes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we made it through the first week of August, and America still hasn't gotten a new stimulus check, so we got a lot of Americans struggling. Charlton trying to figure out how they're going to feed their families, how they're going to pay their rent, utilities. You know, America right now is in a struggling place. I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, our doctors, our first responders for staying strong and trying to keep America safe and alive.
Really appreciate those words. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars also all around the world. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV or you'll be looking at a still picture. Man, I love taking the pause, Big C. I was listening to the Oakland A's broadcast last night, and I thought they were Big C Sports. I said, Big C, you're doing live play-by-play. They were using our platform. Welcome to the show, all that good stuff. Really appreciate that. I also want to say I appreciate our Veterans Crisis Hotline, Big C. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, the struggle in America is real, just like for the veterans that have been suffering with a lot of PTSD since returning from service, Charlton. They get released back into mainstream society, and they don't have that support base that they've had in the military service.
Yeah.
We're losing some 22 veterans a day to suicide in this country, a horrific number. We never hear the administration addressing this issue, Charlton, but it is real. Just like the administration will not address COVID-19 any longer. We've lost over 160,000 Americans to date, Charlton, from this horrific disease. We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton. We need more Americans to participate in this effort, trying to save our great veterans from this downward spiral, this disease called suicide. So anytime that you can find, that you see somebody who you feel may be struggling mentally, socially, don't hesitate giving out this number. It's not an embarrassment. It's not an impeachment on somebody's face, but it might be someone that you save by giving out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number.
And I love giving it out, Big C. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can get some help. Really appreciate that. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley, Home's weekly TV. There's so many great things happening, Big C. They're on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants and the Say Hey Kid. When you reach out to buy a ticket for the Giants, just tell them Big C sent you. The goal is simple. Recruit 100 real estate brokers, put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it. Sports teams are doing it. You can watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you can see opportunities. You know, I really appreciate the platform that we have with Big C Sports. I told you I was just listening to the Oakland A's after we did our show yesterday, And I thought I logged out from the show, Big C. I kept hearing the hip hop music the way we do in the background, Big C. I heard some thundering. I said, man, it's pretty hot for thundering. And I heard you're listening to Oakland A's baseball. I thought Big C started his own baseball broadcast without letting me know. But I really want to open today's show. I know you talk so much about our military, and I really do appreciate that you give it up. In fact, you brought it to my attention. I was clueless when it comes to that. But I want to pay attention also. After the Civil War, Big C, in the late 1860s, the Buffalo Soldiers were black Americans. They were working to protect a park called Yosemite National Park. They were park rangers. And that's in Central California up in the Sierra foothills. Half Dome is one of the most beautiful places. I actually stood on that dome a couple of times. But when you think about it, Half Dome, Yosemite National Park, discovered by Ansel Adams, allegedly, even though a lot of other people were here before, it was protected by Buffalo Soldiers. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, blacks have been an integral part of American history ever since they've been here. In places they didn't want to be, in places where they also wanted to serve. When you look at the history books in America, Charlton, it omits many black great feats that have occurred in America. And people tend to think that blacks have not had any contribution to the development of America, but yet they are the spine of America, Charlton. For their labors, their ingenuity, and their protective services that they've done throughout this country's history.
Yeah, it's always been that way. So anyone that's ever gone to Yosemite and you see the majestic waterfalls, it really is one of the most beautiful places in the universe. From Half Dome to Glacier Park, Big C, there's just so many. It's just so much. It's so much to see. The sightseeing. You see people that climb the mountains, and they climb it. They're not using a ladder, Big C. they don't use it. They're using rope. And some people are using it with their hands. There was a movie called, I think it was called Free Fall. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. But it's about guys who climb mountains. And when you ever get the chance to see Yosemite, it's gorgeous. And just realizing that it was black men that was there protecting people. And this still to this day, with all the greatness that African Americans have given to this country, when people ask for equality, they're still called terrorists. Black Lives Matter is not a terrorist group. It's just say pay attention because we matter too, Big C. Big C Sports wants to be the new sexy. We want to be clever, Big C. We want to be engaging. We want to be bold. We want to be thrilling. We even want to be funny. There's nothing wrong with having a little fun every now and then. We want to be thoughtful, but most important, we want to be provocative. It's real sports talk. Just Google it. I really appreciate what we're doing. I want to step into the world, Big C, of some college football. And I know so much is going on right now because people are saying we're going to kick off. Other smart people are saying, no, we're going to wait till the spring. But Maryland coach Mike Losky is launching a minority coaches program. Now, I think back to the Buffalo Soldiers, these black soldiers that protected Yosemite National Park. Would you believe they did not need a special commission to make sure they had opportunities to work? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is the racism of America, Charlton. I mean, whether you're looking at collegiate sports, you're looking at high school sports, you're looking at professional sports. It is a long trail for African Americans to be able to get an opportunity to be a head coach, to be the number one administrator in a situation. It's a struggle. Even though they're qualified, it's the people in the room where it happens, Charlton, behind that closed door.
Yeah.
You can have all the correlations that you want, but it still comes down to knocking down the door, Charlton, and forcing those people to accept what you want to do. It's no mystery that there's qualified black coaches out there, Charlton, at every level.
Oh, yeah.
But it comes down to this nepotism thing. The person who looks like you that you feel comfortable with giving out those $1 million salaries.
Yeah, it really is. And then you think about Maryland Terrapins coach Mike Losky, Big C. He can remember sitting in the NFL's quarterback coaching summit. It was back in 2019 at Morehouse College in Atlanta, one of the most beautiful cities in the country, where the leaders from the league's operations department and the Black College Football Hall of Fame, they brought together dozens of people of color with higher coaching aspirations. And where I take a U-turn, what I don't like seeing, but I know you gotta grow together. But what I won't say it breaks my heart, but I want your thoughts. When you get the brightest black minds that get together, they're always asking, how can we infiltrate this white group of men, whether it's coaching or administrators, and those white coaches and those administrators, they do not win without black men. So why do you take the men who win the most on the playing surface, and then you beg people who won't give you a job if you can play for them, instead of forming your own damn league? You already had it, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you can't do that on the collegiate level. You have the HBC colleges, Charlton, but you don't have enough of them to take in all the black athletes out there that go to mainstream universities. The problem is, Charlton, it's a good old boys network. It's what they've always done to each other. The recommendations come from the guys who are already coaches. They make the call to a university for somebody, hey, I would like for you to interview my guy.
Right.
And so that carries a lot of weight. When you don't have a copious amount of black coaches out there, Charlton, that have their assistants going for interviews, then there's no way that you're going to break down that door.
Yeah, and when you think about it, Big C, we are not a monolithic group. So I never like lumping my behavior in with the masses of African Americans. Everybody has one brain for one body, Big C. Unless you're Rudy Giuliani, then you have half a brain for half a body, if that makes sense to you. But Baltimore Ravens general manager Ozzie Newsome, this is a good old boy, came from Alabama, University of Alabama. The first NFL's black GM. Can you believe that? The NFL's first general manager. And he said that he did not realize that there were that many African Americans coaching quarterbacks. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look around, Charlton, they are there. I mean, they play the position. There's coaches there, coaches that are not in that head coaching position.
Yeah.
That's the problem. The head coach is the guy who gives the recommendation. It's like when you put on your resume, do you have a reference that we can call and speak to? And when you put on your resume, your reference is, Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney,
Caucasian.
All these big head coaches, Charlton, that are at these large national institutions.
Yeah.
Then they're going to call that guy, and that guy is going to speak highly of you, Charlton. But when you're a Negro coach and you're trying to get one of these jobs, how many opportunities have you had? Mike Locksley, he got his job because he worked for Kirby Smart down in Georgia.
Yeah.
So that was his recommendation. He had the recommendation of the Georgia head coach.
Yeah.
But if he had not worked under Georgia's head coach, Kirby Smart, he wouldn't have gotten the job at Maryland.
Yeah, he would. It's about who you know, Big C. You know, it's always who you know. I remember when I started in the broadcast, working with, I think my first job was at Fox Sports and then CBS Sports, NBC Sports, and most of the time, I was one of maybe two African American men working in the producer's truck, and then I got moved up to the press box. But almost every time, of about 60 people down in the TV trucks, making sure that what you see on the playing field is transferred over to television, all of those guys were white. And most all of them told me they got a job because Joe called Bill, Bill called Bob, Bob called Dave. Hey, they got a job, do you want it? That was what it was. African Americans don't have that. I want to mention something, too, because I want to be a part of this, and you sparked my mind to it, because we always talk about John Lewis and voting. And I want everyone to realize, I want to do this every show if I don't forget. I want people to register to vote. All you have to do is pick up that phone. You probably have it within 3 feet of you now. And you just vote, and you text it to 26797. Text VOTE, V-O-T-E-R, it's voter actually, to 26797, and you can register to vote and check your registration status, Big C. I want to make sure that people know that Big C Sports is doing that and the NFL is doing that. We got to get out the vote. Just text VOTE to 26797 and get yourself registered. Don't wait until November 1st. They want people to get ready so you can get your votes done now, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's always great to be on the voter polls every day. And you don't have to sit around. I do vote by mail.
Yeah.
So I make sure that mine is in early, that I'm always registered, Charlton. Even when I go places and they say, have you registered to vote? I'll say no. Yeah, so they'll register me again. But you don't have to sit around and wait on November 3rd and wait on those long, copious lines to go stand in and get frustrated when you find out that the machine is not working, they've run out of paper.
Yeah.
Or dubious other things that they have done trying to sway the election in the way that they want it to go.
Yep.
So as a American citizen, when we only had 60 million people vote the last election, Charlton. 60 million. We need to do better than that as a people.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? You talk about voter obstruction, and you talked about the Mitch McConnell and his cronies, those devil of people. They know if they believe in a God, God must be pretty disappointed with them. But I believe they believe in the devil, Big C. But the federal courts, this is why we say you got to vote. Today, you got to understand this. In Washington, D.C., a federal appeals court, they ruled Friday that House Democrats, they can take the Trump administration to court when current and former officials refuse to comply with subpoenas, rejecting the Justice Department's argument that Congress could not ever sue. Big C, even these good old boys in Washington are using the law to overrule Trump. Now, Rudy Giuliani said Black Lives Matter was a terrorist group. You have someone like his best friend POTUS. They refused to even answer subpoenas. They were told to shut up and answer by the Federal Court of Appeals. That's today, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, as said in the Federal Court of Appeals, this means that Trump will move it to the Supreme Court, where he has two justices that he's appointed to sway the court in his favor. So this is going to be a long, drawn-out battle. It's not going to affect the election and what's coming up with that. I mean, that was all part of the impeachment process. Right now, they need to focus on the election.
Yeah, and people got to know, you got a crooked guy, a guy that's so crooked, even federal appeals court told him no, and now he's going to try to scribble his way. I mean, what is a terrorist, really? When you get a subpoena from United States law, from the lawyers, Big C, a Justice Department, and you try to scrum your way out of that, and you don't consider yourself terrorist activity, it's a crazy world that we live in, but we got to keep going forward with it. I want to ask you something before I get into the world of college football. When you think about it, and I want your thoughts on it, with NFL football, in half of the United States, it seems, watching sports of some form or fashion, we know sports is a billion-dollar industry, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, track and field, hockey, soccer, badminton, whatever it is, Big C. If we get more, and I know you say no, it's not necessary, if we get more athletes to just at least tell people get out and vote. No one's saying who to vote for. If you want to vote for a guy that wants to grab your daughter by the vagina, that's your choice. If any man wants to tell his daughter, or a grandfather wants to tell his grandchild, that you willingly vote for a man that tells his other men it's okay to grab women by the vagina, and you want to vote for them, you got to explain that to your own loved ones. But I think athletes would do a better job just saying vote. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when he got elected, he told people what he did and how egregious his act was.
Yeah, that's
and people still elected him. You have to look at the mindset of people. Everybody is not going to be swayed by an athlete, because if that was the case, then all of America would have stood by Colin Kaepernick, but they turned their back on an athlete.
Yeah.
When you look at where the president is and the people who back the president, Charlton, they believe in what he does and what he says, because most of them act that type of way in their own social life. I understand that the push from athletes to get people out to vote, Charlton, because there's no games, but you have to be, as an individual, wanting something to change in your life. Every time you watch a basketball game, football game, baseball game, hockey game, your life doesn't change.
Yep.
It doesn't alter you financially. So you have to have the prescience enough as an individual to get up off your butt and go place that vote.
Yeah.
Whether you do it an absentee ballot, Charlton, where it comes to your house and you take the time to fill it out, or you get up and go to a polling station, Charlton. Voting is nothing new. We've had the right to vote since 1965 as a culture. As a culture since 1965.
Yeah.
Long before many of the people who are eligible to vote were born. So if it doesn't drive you enough to have this right to do something that's legal, that no one can obstruct you from legally, if that's not enough initiative to go out and do it, and not only that, it will change your life and it will alter the next generation's life by you going out to vote. If that doesn't mean anything, turning on a sporting event is nothing.
Yeah, that's very true. It's amazing. Before I ask you some things about college football that are on my mind, pejoratively speaking, when you have a country that says if Colin Kaepernick exercises his First Amendment right, freedom of expression, taking a knee during the national anthem, which a Navy SEAL asked him to do, and people said get the hell out of the country. a man says he's going to grab your daughter by the PUSS bloppity blop blop, and you say, it's okay, honey, that's the kind of man I vote for. That doesn't make any sense to me. College football, universities.
Well, you got more white Americans, Charlton, than you do have black Americans. And so more white Americans are going to agree with what this guy said prior to getting elected, and even since he's been elected, than what you're going to have black Americans in this country. You got to understand just the population percentage.
Yeah.
He probably has 30% of white America, Charlton, that believes and lives on his every word. And when 13% of the population is black, you don't have a chance to compete against that.
Yeah, it's just shocking and chilling. As a white lady told me, and this is from her perspective, that she felt ashamed that 52% of white women voted for Donald Trump, and I think over 60% of white men voted for Donald Trump after he said he would grab women by the vagina. And so for any of those men that has a daughter or a wife that's ever sexually assaulted by another man, and they go to the father and say, this is what happened, a man grabbed me by the PUSS bloppity blop blop, and you voted for him anyway, what advice do they give to the daughters to stay safe, Big C? It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, think about the adult entertainment industry, Charlton, in America.
Good point.
Who is the number one participant in the adult entertainment industry in America?
Yeah.
It's not black.
There's
not enough blacks to control that industry. It is the largest video-making institution in America, and it's owned by large corporations, Charlton.
Yeah.
The same ones who stream the stuff on television that you watch.
Yeah.
And so they advocate for it. It goes on all the time. If they're not participating in it, then they're watching it on some type of electronic device, Charlton. So this is the reason why what he said was so acceptable.
I guess you have to be part of that group to understand how they all get down. Maybe it's all fair in love and war, and they really mean that, Big C. Syracuse football, University of Syracuse. Their players refused to practice on Thursday, stated that they held a series of team meetings, and some of those meetings included head coach Dino Babers, Big C, and athletic director John Wildhack, Big C. Players are actually starting to gain footing, if that makes sense to you, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, players are understanding, Charlton, of the economic and physical impact of COVID-19. And to be realistic is where they are. They're sitting here saying, what's the gain for us? And that's where players are starting to get to the point of, they know that the money is 2 years down the road, but they're looking at now the economic impact on these universities, Charlton, and say, what's in it for us? If we go out there and play, you guys keep the revenue.
Yeah.
We get a sweatsuit and a T-shirt.
Yeah.
That's what the players are looking at. They're looking for some economic balance right now is what the players are looking for.
Yeah, and I'm glad when athletes start taking their head out of their blah, 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 Big C. College football with Notre Dame in the ACC Atlantic Coast Conference and UConn canceling this season. Where does BYU and other FBS independents stand? BYU has just 7 games on the schedule this season, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this is the impact of teams playing conference-only games.
Yeah.
Notre Dame had the luxury of being a part of the ACC, so they could absorb the rest of the conference. And they were able to bring something to the table, a huge independent television contract.
Yeah.
UConn didn't have that, not being a conference participant, Charlton. And all of the games that UConn had on schedule were Power 5 conference schools.
Yeah.
So they just canceled. I think they had 2 teams that were not Power 5 conference. So it didn't make economic sense to just try to schedule those 2 teams.
Yeah. You know how African Americans are saying, justice, when do we want it? Now. What do we want? Justice, when do we want it? Now. The NCAA is saying, we want free labor and money. When do we want it? Now. Big C, they want free labor and money. And players are starting to say, wait a minute. I listened to this sports program called Big C Sports, and they're the only sports show in the universe that's not ogling over how big, strong, and fast I am, how fast I run the 40, how high I can jump, how large my wingspan is. I mean, they're not concerned about that. They're telling me to think about it. And I'm telling you, I'm just going to pat ourselves on the back. And people can say, yeah, no, that's not true. But there's no other sports program that speaks honestly with people. You ever have a woman tell you, I love you. You make me so happy. I just love you so much. And she won't call your name. She calls you honey. Okay, Big C, sometimes she don't want to get the name mixed up. We're just telling you, hey, my name is what it is. And we're Big C Sports. And I'm proud that young athletes are starting to say, wait a minute. I matter too. All this money's coming in. Open your books because we need to see how much we can get. Notre Dame and Navy, Big C. The midshipmen. this streak is going to end at 97 consecutive years of playing each other in football for free. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about the rivalry, Charlton. Some of the greatest collegiate athletes of all time have come out of this rivalry. And when you think about the midshipmen of Navy, Charlton, during the 30s, 40s, and 50s, they were one of the elite programs in college football, extending all the way into the 60s when they had that last Heisman Trophy winner in Roger Staubach. The Naval Academy has a rich history of collegiate football.
Yeah.
And this rivalry between the military and the Catholics is one of the longest-running rivalries, non-conference in college football history.
Yeah.
So you think about this game that everyone looked forward to, Charlton, for 97 years is going to come to an end. And hopefully, in the near future, they'll be able to bring this rivalry back.
Yeah, we hope that they can. And, things come and go. They skipped out on the 1918 season because of Spanish flu. Teams came back and played 1919. I want to look at the biggest rivalry, Big C, college football rivalry in the universe. When you think about it, it's Notre Dame versus the University of Southern California. USC Notre Dame, they've been playing that game since 1926. So you're going back, I want to say about 94 years, if my math is right. It's except for 1943 and 45, they've never missed a beat. It's going to happen this year. It's considered the greatest intersectional series in college football. Most rivalries, USC, UCLA, Oklahoma, and then Texas. You have Alabama, Auburn, Ohio State, Michigan. Those teams are pretty much in the same conference. But USC, Notre Dame, they've been doing it since 1926, and it's going to be knocked out by the COVID-19 virus. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you go back to the Notre Dame Navy game, Charlton, even during World War.
Yeah.
They did not stop that game. That game was so important to the interest of America and the motivation of the athletes in the armed services,
Yeah.
Charlton, that they kept that game playing. You talked about the USC Notre Dame game that they took time off during World War II.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an intersectional game, but it still didn't have the power and the majesty of Navy Notre Dame.
Yeah. It's big football, and I know it's just taking a pause for a season. In fact, some teams are coming back in the spring. So I want to look at something else about college football before we get up on the Big C pause. Big C, college football is a list of the rest of independent programs. Army, you have Liberty, New Mexico State, used to be part of the conference, no longer. UMass, all of these teams have less than a 10-game schedule. Big C, your thoughts?
And that's going to affect these games these universities economically, Charlton, when you think about that. What is the distance that they're going to have to travel to get to these intersectional games because they're non-conference?
Yeah.
And how will it last? If these universities that are in a conference come up with a COVID-19 spike, Charlton, do they cancel that game, especially if it's a large revenue game for those universities?
Well, I'm going to answer that question when we come back, because my answer is, if a tree falls in the forest and you don't hear it, did it really fall? We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we're back from the Big C Timeout, also known as the Big C Pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can even follow Big C Sports on Spotify. So many apps that I appreciate. But you were asking me this question. You were asking the question, what's going to happen if people start testing positive COVID-19, especially college? Would you believe college football, Colorado State University, up there at Mile High, falling allegations, just allegations, Big C, that student athletes, they have been threatened. You ever be threatened by somebody, Big C? Threatened and intimidated, like what Rudy Giuliani does to innocent black kids when they were patrolling, stop and frisk. Rudy Giuliani knew what terrorist and threatening behavior is. Being deemed unconstitutional, that knucklehead of a person. But athletes have been intimidated and told to ignore COVID-19 protocol. Think about that. This is the same law firm that's been hired that the University of Iowa consulted to handle this recent racial bias probe. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you can say it's allegations coming from the athletes, but I'm going to have a tendency to believe the athletes. These athletes, they don't have any gain, Charlton, by being dishonest.
Right.
When they're saying what they've been told to not follow protocol and not report certain situations concerning to COVID-19, Charles.
Yeah.
These athletes are concerned about their long-term health. And I know you always say that, well, people recover and everyone doesn't die from it. But whenever you get it in your system, it affects your system long-term. And that's what these athletes are starting to understand, the long-term effects from this COVID-19 and many other Americans, Charlton. You know, I saw the other night on a news program where a guy was released from the hospital after serving 133 days in the hospital for COVID-19. Not only that, he lost the lower half of his right leg while he was in there because of the circulation had gotten so bad in his body. You know, he had the tracheotomy and everything else.
Yeah.
133 days in a hospital ICU, Charlton, for COVID-19. So when people think this is not serious and everyone doesn't die, he didn't die, but his life has forever been altered.
Yeah. Well, everybody knows it's serious, but we still got to have hope that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And there is. There's a lot of things coming to the light. It may take to the end of the year, but it's coming to the light. Would you believe, I want to ask you a question because you want to put the onus on college athletes, and I always put the onus on college athletes. You always say, no, Charles, politicians. If Donald Trump were to test positive for COVID-19, I want to get your thoughts, your percentage of what would they tell the American people. 100% they wouldn't say nothing, or do you think they would tell the American people if Donald Trump ever tested positive? It seems like everybody around him has inhaled the smoker smoke. You know what a smoker smoke is? It's the after smoke. When they puff out, you don't have to smoke, but you smell the smoke. So when so many people around him have tested positive in his cabinet, why not him, Big C? You think they would really tell the American people? Your thoughts?
You know, there's no way that he would let it out, Charlton, that he tested positive for COVID-19, because that would destroy his base and all of what he said, that the virus is not serious and that anybody can get a test at any time they want, and you don't have to protect yourself. He's never mandated masks. So he would never let that be known.
No, he would never let it be known. He didn't let it be known about the $135,000 to one of the women that makes up the majority of the adult entertainment industry, Big C. And when you think about terrorists, and I'm not trying to equate that industry to terror. I believe that industry is great because it gives people work and they can do it safely as opposed to behind somebody's barn someplace. But that's just my own opinion. But I gotta get your thoughts on this because I know POTUS lies a lot. And it just leads me to believe, I'm going to say something that's probably stupid, but it won't be the first time. When I hear birds of a feather flock together, and we talked about that story yesterday, when the good police officers, they hate bad police officers. If that's the case, why don't they turn them in? If you saw a stray dog running through your neighborhood, maybe a pit bull, and it's intimidating, you wouldn't wait until it mauled somebody to call Animal Protective Services or 911. You would call right away, but a lot of people, they know his garbage, and they love him anyway. And every white man has to answer to that because they have daughters too. But I'm not white, so I don't understand. I do want to ask you something about college football, where people are united. And it seems to be led by the Pac-12. Pac-12 executives in the hashtag #WeAreUnited leaders held a productive call on Thursday, Big C, in which the conference officials said they will not engage with the movement's most aggressive demand, and that's a cut in 50% of the conference revenue. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, this is what college sports have always fought against, Charlton, that we're not wanting to pay athletes. We're not wanting them to get any part of the revenue. But these Pac-12 players have understood that without their participation, you get 0% revenue.
Yeah.
You get no television revenue. You're definitely not going to get any attendance revenue. And this is the fear of collegiate athletics, Charlton, is that the uprising right now of the collegiate athlete, and I've kept stating it, this is the most power that they will ever have at any time in history with this COVID-19. It has been an ally for athletes who want to force change in college athletics.
Yeah, it's like anything else. The time is now. Like, what do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. Well, now's the time. You can't run away. NCAA, they have been criticized for the outside. When you think about a lot of people on the outside criticizing them, we do too. And it's a slow-moving target. It's an easily criticize anybody. But I want to get your thoughts. When you think about those who find college athletics to be poorly governed, at best, immoral at worst, if you have no stake in the NCAA, you probably would hate them and their antitrust garbage they've been doing for over a century, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the NCAA is the number one antitrust institution in America, Charlton. It exploits athletes for gain. And they said, well, we give them a scholarship where they can go to school for free. Is it really free?
No.
When you think about the total cost to an athlete and the revenue that individual athlete generates for a Power 5 university, it is not free. He is a cash cow for those universities.
Yeah.
And the university's unwillingness to give these players any type of financial stipend, Charlton, over the years has been a hypocrisy.
Yeah.
You can lose your scholarship for taking a steak dinner from somebody.
Yeah.
But, a head coach can go to any event that he wants for free and get paid to be there.
Yeah.
That's a hypocrisy.
Yeah. If you get a steak dinner, that's so you can eat. You don't have to run up and down the field to eat, but you got to run up and down the field to be a part of the NCAA because they're going to make that money. And, it's something I may disagree with you. I was just thinking about it. And when you think about college sports, I love the Pac-12 because I grew up out here, and I've always thought they were more progressive than other conferences. That's my opinion, Big C. Pac-12 is planning a COVID-19 loan. It's a COVID-19 program. It's a loan program with the season in jeopardy. And I want everyone that says we need sports back now. Each university, and there's currently 12 of them, would be eligible for $83 million in a loan if the 2020 season is canceled. Now, that loan will be set at a 3.75% interest rate over the next 10 years. And I might say it's a good or bad thing, but when they're using mostly black talent to do the work, that's like reparations again for white people, because that money's not going to go into the bank accounts of black people. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is what I've constantly advocated for, that the Negroes could start their own league. The Negroes could go back to the HBCs. Look at the amount of revenue that you can get a loan on for the value of the athletes that you have on your campus. This is just collegiate, that you can get an $83 million loan amortized over 10 years because you know that you're going to have these black athletes on campus performing, and you're talking about the loss that you're going to suffer. If these kids had any knowledge about them, Charlton, if they look beyond taking a snap or dribbling a ball, go back to an HBC and play there. Look at the type of revenue that would be coming into these HBCs. If you got $83 million in 1 year that you're covering, Charlton, to cover all of your athletic department on a loan, and you got 10 years to pay it back, and the players don't get $83 out of it, this is hypocrisy.
No, it's funny. It's funny because it's so dumb. It's like, some people, if you just think about it, it's $1 billion primarily. It's $996 million. It's $1 billion that these white men are going to be able to get from the banks. And when they say bring in your pay stub, your W-2, oh, this is future earning. Well, future earnings, so what's your product? We got all these black guys that we're going to recruit to our school. Okay, so what's the profit and loss? How much do you pay these guys? We pay them nothing. We give them a fake scholarship that we write off. But they're going to let white men steal $1 billion on predominantly black labor, Big C. And they don't have to pay back the labor. You were talking to me about reparations yesterday. And I said reparations are necessary, especially for black Americans, because black Americans built this country, Big C, for nearly 400 years without pay. There are people right now hurting, not being flippant about it, hurting because Mitch McConnell and his cronies won't give out $600 to keep even white people from starving. But when you think about the genocide that's been planned against black Americans, from hate crimes to lynchings from the KKK, neo-Nazi groups, the N-word, racial slurs, swastikas, burning cross, Confederate flags, Jim Crow laws, even the Chinese Exclusion Act, police brutality, school-to-prison pipeline, discriminatory in lending, not even getting an anti-lynching bill passed, hiring discrimination, Make America Great Again and their dog whistles, racial profiling, gerrymandering, no challenging to racist jokes, no challenging to higher education when it comes to white people. They want to give them scholarships, and their parents didn't do anything but write a phony check and got them in there. But black Americans are still called, and what they call it again, a terrorist group because Black Lives Matter. You know what Black Lives Matter? to the Pac-12 when they want to get nearly $1 billion in loans that they don't have to pay for the exercise of their talent? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charleston, my thoughts on that is why can't the HBCs get this type of loan advancement from these credit institutions, Charleston? Because they're black. You're willing to give money to white people. It's not about reparation. You're just willing to give money to white people. Why can't you give that same amount of money to the HBCs? They have black athletes out there with needs also, Charleston, their educational institution. But this is a racist move. This is not about reparation. This is just a strictly racist move.
Yeah.
We will give the money to the white institution, but we won't give the money to the black institution.
Like the USDA, they won't give money to black farmers that have the same farmland in the same cities and counties that white Americans farmers. And when they do give them a loan, it takes sometimes as many as 14 months. It's only 12 months in a year. The average white farmer gets their loan approved in less than 30 days. So that's from an application to funding. Same cities, same counties. The cows eat the same gray or yellow grass, whatever the color the grass is, Big C. I think it's yellow or gray. Sometimes it's green, but it doesn't rain a lot in California. I want to jump real quick to the NFL because we can talk about give me a chance to sit down at the dinner table, Big C. If we had that mentality, we still wouldn't have a Big C sports show. White people would have sabotaged it. They would have said, well, just you don't want to ask for too much. You don't want to hurry people along. You don't want to make people feel that you're angry because you want to produce the same way they're producing. You don't want to make them feel like you're really motivated. Then they'll call you lazy if you don't ask 50 times, Big C. NFL Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin, one of the few men of color who are running an NFL team, and I think he's the third winningest active coach in the NFL, if that makes sense to you. He spoke for many this week when he called the lack of diversity a joke doing an NFL Network interview. I'm telling you, Mike Tomlin, you're a smart guy. Have you guys looked at Negro League Baseball? They didn't beg white people for work. They created their own league. We just told you what the Pac-12 is trying to do with their business, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, and what organization does he work for, and what's the name of the owners of that organization?
The Rooney. Yeah.
The Rooney Rule. And he's telling you that the organization that he worked for and the name that it's under far as minority hiring, the Rooney Rule, is a joke. Because here is a man who has been a head coach in the NFL for the past decade, and he has not seen the growth of black coaches in the NFL, Charlton, as head coaches, as offensive and defensive coordinators. He don't even see them getting an interview.
Yeah.
So when you're talking to a guy who is sitting there in that stature position that he's in, he's won a Super Bowl, but he can tell you firsthand that the rule is a joke. We've talked about that for a long time. You got to stop putting names on rules in the NFL and college sports saying, okay, because we got this rule in place.
Yeah.
A rule is a damn word. You got to put something in place that's factual, Charlton, that you're going to get fined, you're going to lose draft picks, all of these things. If these things are not implemented, you're going to lose out on bowl games in college if these rules are not implemented. So you have to put something in place, Charlton, that's going to cost them potentially financially for them to act. But to say we got a Rooney Rule that says you got to interview a minority coach, we went through this last year with the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
When Marvin Lewis went in for an interview, they sent him back to the hotel after the interview.
Yeah.
Mike McCarthy comes in, they gave him a room in the guest house.
Yeah, the room in the guest house. I remember in college there was a girl, she would line up a date for every night of the week, and I said, why do you date so many guys? She said, I want to eat. But she would only sleep with the ones she wanted to, but everybody was buying her something to eat, Big C. It's like the Rooney Rule. They already know who they're going to sleep with. Everybody else is just there for the meal, and they got to understand that. If you don't start your own league the way Big C Sports started our own sports show, everybody wants to start on top. You don't climb a ladder by stepping on the top level first. You got to climb from the bottom to the top. But if you own the ladder, no one can come pull it out from under you. If you don't own that ladder, someone can say, hey, I need my ladder back. You can say, wait, I got 10 more floors to climb. Hey, that's not my problem. I need my ladder back. And a lot of people are in the sports, in the entertainment industry that way. You got to find your own ladder. Yes, Big C Sports, we want to be sexy. We want to be thrilling. We want to be the coolest sports show. We really do. We want to be thoughtful, provocative. We want to be engaging. We really want to be provocative, though. We want people to ask those questions. If you're in a position in life where you're begging another man, can you breathe? If you're begging another man, can you breathe? Or can you have a chance to feed your children? You put yourself in that position. That's why a lot of African Americans made it when they were self-employed. When they came into the workforce, they got ostracized and fired. Last hired, first fired. It's all fair and level work. NCAA college football. Would you believe the Big Sky Conference, Big C? They put their fall sports on pause because they put health in front of money. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you're seeing this more and more, Charlton. I mean, when you talk about playing college football, it's about publicity right now. It's not about actually participating. It's about publicity. We haven't seen anybody in practice. Normally they'd be on practice, showing their practice sessions on television, on the sports highlight shows. We haven't seen that, Charlton. There is a lot of actions moving back and forth because everybody has a lot of uncertainty about what's going on health-wise right now.
Yeah.
And when you look at these lower-tier conferences that are not part of the Power Five, that don't have the $100 million in revenue coming in from their football program, they're looking at the overall risk of what they're taking a risk on. And if they start a season and have to shut down a season, it may cost them even more doing that.
Yeah, and they said, the commissioner said the moves will likely cancel the 2020 FCS playoffs. Who cares about playoffs? Keep the kids healthy. But the Big Sky hopes that other conferences will follow his lead and that the NCAA will shift to the FCS title game in the spring. In the FCS, Big C is really 1AA. I believe Chris Alt back at Nevada in the late 70s started what we now know as the college football playoffs. He started, I think they had 4 programs. It was Nevada, it was UMass, and 2 others that I can't recall. And so if Division I is going to follow Division I AA, I hate the FBS and FCS. I think they're right, and they should do it. Tom Wichtill is his name, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, as you're looking at moving forward with college football, you got to get a kickoff first.
Yeah.
Whether you do anything else, you got to get a kickoff first. And that right now is the major hiccup with college football. What's the chance of getting a kickoff?
Yeah, there's not. Man, it's just like the girl that I knew in college. She dated a different guy every week. And I said, why do you date so many guys? They just did it so she could eat because guys would pay for food. They thought they were going to get what they wanted, but they were just giving out free meals, Big C. And it's like the schools are doing the same thing. If you're really sincere about taking care of the people that you say you love, and you're going to treat them like they're your own kids, think about what James Madison did. They put fall sports on pause, and they're planning to play in spring, Big C. They're going to put player health over money. It's so important, and maybe they're doing it because people are saying, I'm not going to play anyway. So maybe they realize the players they're not going to come and play anyway. So why don't we just stop trying to drag that horse to get some water and make sure they'll be at least lining things up for the spring, if that makes sense to you, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, people talking about spring sports really doesn't make sense because you got to have a conglomerate of people willing to do the same thing that are in your schedule.
Yeah.
If they're not a part of your schedule and they're not moving to the spring, who are you going to have?
Yeah.
You can be one institution moving to the spring out of a conference, but if everybody else is playing or potentially trying to play, where does that leave you when you get to that point? This is what we keep talking about. There's no uniformity in the NCAA.
Yeah.
There's no commissioner in the NCAA. Mark Emmert is like, I don't know what's going on. He's the president
he wants money.
of the NCAA.
Yeah.
But he's buffoonery.
Yeah.
Because he does not know how to bring everybody together, set a set schedule. How can you have 3 consecutive weekends of kickoffs for conferences to start out of the Power 5?
Yeah.
You can't do that. And so until, as an NCAA, is that you have a governing body that is in charge, a commissioner who oversees their entire sports playing surface. You got to have a commissioner for football.
Yep.
You have to have a commissioner for baseball, for basketball, track and field. Every active sport in the NCAA needs a commissioner. Right now, everybody in football is flying by the seat of their pants.
Yeah, and when you look at the I want to call it Division I AA, and they're opting out because of COVID-19. The Big Sky, the Pioneer League, announcing that they announced it today. The Missouri Valley Football Conference reportedly will be the next to join. Also, the CAA, the Ivy League, we know they've already done it. The MEAC, the Northeast, the Patriot League, the SWAC. So there's a lot of conferences that are just saying, we're not going to keep playing games like my friend who would date guys to make them think they were going to get lucky, and she just wanted a free meal. It's all fair and love and war. I want to get your thoughts on this. I really want Big Steve's thoughts. Because whether it's college sports or pro sports, and maybe we can't mix the two because college guys are not making $1 million a year, or some guys 20 and 30 and $40 million a year. But I do want to get Big C's thoughts on the player's mindset. When you look at coaches, Big C, and you look at players, and you can't speak for everybody, but what do you think are the pros and the cons of playing games in COVID-19 season when some colleges programs are just saying, no, we're not going to do it? Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, it comes down to each his own. I mean, there's no pros and there's no cons. It's about someone's mindset. It's just like asking somebody to go vote, and they say, I don't have the time for it, or my vote doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, when you look at these players who are taking the chance of playing against COVID-19, it's the same as someone going to a bar saying, I'm not concerned about COVID-19, or going to a house party saying, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
Players are looking at this for economic gain long term by going out playing.
Yeah.
Health risk, I think they take the mindset that you take, is that people are going to get sick.
Yeah.
People are going to die. Everybody's not going to die. There's going to be people that survive. So people take that mindset also when you look at that collegiate and professional sports.
Yeah.
Is it the same thing that you've told me for weeks about this? They're looking at the same thing. They're looking at the money grab also. You know, where's my economic
Where's
going to lie? And it's by playing sports.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe, but not all the way. The athletes, yes, their money is coming by playing sports. But some of these white guys, just like the colonialists that kidnapped Africans from the African continent and brought them to South America and North America, they get their labor free. So and I want to touch on this one more time because some people ask me, so why do you believe reparations are necessary? Why do you believe reparations is something that we weren't the ones doing it? There is no land that has been created since 1619. They either build high rises into the air, or they even put some buildings under the ground, like you told me, the African American Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. There's several stories underground. But there's no new land. None of it. But all of the land that was farmed, and the food that was grown, and the streets that were built, and all the vegetables that were tilled, the black men that did it for over 350 years, they got nothing. Nothing. And so all of that money that bequeathed up to white generations from 1619 to even 2020, most of that money came off of the backs of other people. The NCAA has mastered that same roadmap, Big C. The only thing different is they give black men a diploma and say, go get a job against white men that they're going to hire people who look like them for the most part. They'll hire you, but not going to be their manager or their head football coach, but you'll get a job. And people say, well, reparations never happened with white people. This whole country was built on reparation, free labor, into the tens of trillions of dollars, hundreds of trillions, never been paid back. We just talked about the Pac-12 wanting a $1 billion loan, and they're going to pay it back with interest over 10 years. Reparations never paid back anybody that was black. No, there's no white landowner that gave black men anything, but they kept bequeathing that to their generations of families for years, over 400 years almost, Big C. So reparations are still happening to this day because they've mastered getting free labor out of black people playing sports, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's what I stated earlier. Why can't the HBCs, Charlton, get those loans? I mean, they're not on an equal playing field. This is how society is. When society is controlled by white men who will make the decision on which nationality gets whatever, as you want to call it, reparation or financial assistance, it's going to be that way. When we got 97 white senators and 3 blacks, and one of those blacks could be a white also, Tim Scott.
Yeah.
These are the individuals who control the purse strings and where revenue is going to go. And here's the Pac-12 getting a $1 billion loan. And players hold a meeting with the conference commissioner saying, hey, we want part of the revenue for this upcoming season because without us, you have no season. You lose 100% of your revenue without us. And so we feel that we deserve to be paid.
Yep.
And when those conferences turn those players down, said, no, we will listen to other concerns you have, but we're not giving you a damn dime. You need to get your head out of your butt on that one because you're not coming up to our status financially.
Yeah.
This is what's been fought for 400 years in America. And now you have conferences openly telling players, we're not giving you the money, regardless of how much money you make it. We're not giving any of it to you.
Yeah.
And that's how it is. So if the Pac-12 can get this loan for over 10 years. The HBCs have been struggling for decades trying to get financial assistance, government assistance, banking assistance. They can't get it. This lets you know the value of black life in America, Charlton, that you're willing to give this money to the Pac-12, and HBCs have been asking you for decades for loans and financial input into their institutions, and you've turned them down.
Yeah, the commissioner's a white man. He passes the paperback test when he walks into a bank, and his collateral is young black boys. Can you imagine that? What's different between now colonialism? They gave you a stamp when you were bought as a slave. They branded it on your body. They give you a degree now and say go out there in the white world to compete against people in this MAGA climate, Big C. Major League Baseball, would you believe it again? You always ask, what would it take for them to stop playing when the doctor said your fever's 105? Major League Baseball, St. Louis Cardinals, Chicago Cubs, they're on the pause because of COVID-19 testing, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this is going to be a continuum in Major League Baseball. Rob Manfred says it's under control, but they're constantly canceling out, games, Charlton, because of COVID-19.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't protect people. They're not in a bubble. They're traveling. You know that they're going to get it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what the holdup is on canceling the season. I mean, to be hard-hitted, it's going to come down to the hospitalization of a player for the next pause in any sport, Charlton.
Yeah. It's amazing. I don't want to leave you in England thinking that Big C Sports forgot about you, because Silverstone, England, Sergio Perez will miss a second Formula One race at Silverstone this week. Major League Baseball, NBA, and NFL and college football can hear this. He's going to miss a second one. After one comes two, a second Formula One race at Silverstone this week after again testing positive for COVID-19. So hopefully some of the Americans can get their grasp on that. A couple of more stories before we close, because I always tell you, Big C Sports, we really do want to be sexy. We want to be thrilling. We want to be the coolest, most thoughtful, provocative sports show in the universe. We want to be engaging. We really want to be provocative. I left my heart in San Francisco. It's a beautiful city, Big C. And they have a good old boy at TCP Harding in San Francisco. His name is Lee Armstrong, and he shot 65 in the city by the bay. Tiger's really down. He's going to make the cut, I believe, last I checked. But this is his city. Don't let somebody come in and take it, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charles, you got to think about San Francisco, and not being facetious, they got one of the greatest Chinatowns in North America.
They do.
And so to have an Asian golfer be on the top of the leaderboard, Charlton, I think it's great for tourism. It's great for national pride of that city as far as the contributions that the Asian Americans have made there in Northern California. You think about the internment that they had to deal with during World War II. I think it's only fitting.
Yeah, he also doesn't know what even he's talking about POTUS. He doesn't know why POTUS is making a ban on WeChat, the Chinese social media application that is prominently displayed as one of the golfer's endorsements on its cap. He understands that Donald Trump is a bigot. We told you that a long time ago, and I'm glad that other people from other countries understand that too, Big C. Would you believe that today started the single largest mass gathering in America since COVID-19 outbreak, the annual Sturgis Motorcycle Rally? You like motorcycles, Big C. In North Dakota, Sturgis, North Dakota, where over 250,000 motorcycle riders, they gather every year. Would you believe it was not postponed, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, and that was a shocker, but, they looked at economics over health when it went to Sturgis. And when you think about half of those riders, Charlton, they're in that high-risk area of people over 50 and 60 that people are going to come. And being in Sturgis this weekend, Charlton, there's no mandate for masking or social distancing. They've had as many as 500,000 people attend this annual rally in Sturgis, North Dakota.
Wow.
But the people who go there feel that, hey, I'm invincible.
Yeah.
And this is the problem with America, Charlton. The reason why we cannot get on top of this virus is we have 161,000 deaths in America. You're going to put over 250,000 people together in a community, Charlton, that, they have to be on top of each other, no social distancing. They're going to be at bars. They're going to be at concerts.
Yep.
They're going to be at various rallies there in the community, Charlton, bike shows. this is one of those things. You think that they had a spike when your buddy Trump went to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and had his 6,200 people there at the arena, and several hundred people ended up with COVID-19, and Herman Cain lost his life by attending that rally. Think about tracing, and the biggest problem with this event in Sturgis, Charlton, is that they come from all over America.
Yeah.
So it's like we talked about when players leave the locker room. We got 80 players leaving the locker room going various directions after a football practice. You're going to have 250,000 people leaving Sturgis going all over America, Charlton, potentially spreading this virus.
Yeah, we understand that, Big C. That's why, I want to get people to go out and vote. And Big C Sports don't just want to talk about it. We want to be about it. Text VOTE to 26797. That's VOTE, VOTE, to 26797. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, we have this simulated sports world to come back. Is anybody really overexcited about it without the fans being involved? Question mark. I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, first responders for being strong, helping keep America safe and alive, Charlton.
We always want to be safe and alive, and you can be safe and alive too every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.